Hello, and you're listening to Rivers of the Mind, Season 2, Episode 8. I'm Timmy Vilgiate.
And I'm CJ Hackett.
And we aren't actually sure where we are, or how we got here, or why we're covered in blood, but...
We're working on it. We're definitely working on it. As far as we can tell, it's probably our blood and not someone else's, so that's good?
Yeah. Hello, and thank you for listening to Rivers of the Mind, Season 2, Episode 9. I'm Timmy Vilgiate.
And I'm CJ Hackett.
It looks like the blood we found ourselves covered in at the beginning of last episode has all disappeared.
Yes, it's almost like it appeared only due to a brief rupture in the timelines and faded after 20 minutes, leaving only the vague memory of it having been present at all.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm just loudly including important exposition in the dialogue so that shrewd listeners can make sense of the events in this episode.
CJ, the episode with the giant ocean of blood hasn't even happened yet. Anyway, we'd like to remind you that Rivers of the Mind is not meant to promote the use of drugs in any way, shape, or form.
And as you know, we do not support the thinly veiled use of dialogue to convey exposition.
Elements of Rivers of the Mind might be disturbing to certain listeners.
Rivers of the Mind features the voice talents of CJ Hackett, Timmy Vilgiate, Sophie Das, and Daniel Rojas. If you like Rivers of the Mind, consider going on to patreon.com/Timmy Vilgiate to pledge your support.
Now, with all of that said, here is Season 2, Episode 9 of Rivers of the Mind, entitled Outside. The ocean of dreams stretched on for miles, filled with pale images of the real world underneath in miniature. I looked between my feet to see alarms sounding through the base below, as soldiers wound their way through the hallways. I eventually found my physical body down below, frozen next to a pair of confused and panicked ghosts frantically searching through Dr. Whitebaum's kitchen and living room. Carefully, I floated downwards. The part of the facility where the ghosts had been hiding was right underneath a local Arby's, so I awkwardly slid between a woman filling up an extra-large soda and a young couple kissing next to a trash can. And from there, it was almost a mile of bedrock and sewer systems and power cables to Dr. Whitebaum's private room. From a geological standpoint, it was very interesting. And yeah, some very nice rocks down here. When I got into the room, I reached out for my physical body and felt the utterly alien sensation of my skin stretching to pool with the frozen features of my double until we became one. A feeling of muted, ghostly tangibility returned to my hands and arms. Control over my memories and the memories of the other ghosts passed from the fisherman to the good Ryan. Reality almost imperceptibly shifted. Ryan drafted a new parasitic timeline within the one that surrounded us. The paradox born by his death meant that the fisherman would sooner or later return, but for now we were safe, so long as my physical body lay asleep. Whenever I awoke, the fisherman would be released from my mind, and we would wait as a temporal Trojan horse, essentially invaders, living in a unique dead spot crafted by Ryan's dream harpoon. Sapphire jumped when she noticed that I'd come unfrozen.
He's back!
I turned to face her. Her trembling eyes were wrecked with existential dread. She'd just seen on Dr. Whitebaum's calendar that it was 2017. That meant she'd been dead for almost 50 years. She should have been in her 70s by now if she'd had made it out alive. Her parents had probably died. Her friends had probably all but forgotten her. And worst of all, she'd never escape this place. She'd never get to see the sun again. she'd never get to see those long, beautiful stretches of desert and mountains that she remembered. She would never get to hear music echo across them. She would be trapped here until she finally dissipated from reality. I wanted to reassure her, but there was no reassurance, since at least I could return to my body someday. She'd truly lost hers. She had no idea where she was buried. Her feelings were no overreaction, but the simplest possible statement of our reality. I didn't know what to tell her. I didn't know how to comfort her soul in the weight of this revelation. I had never spoken to a real ghost.
Are you okay?
Her question caught me off guard, since, was I okay? Shouldn't I be asking her that? Didn't it look like I was okay? I'm fine. I'm fine. Yeah, that's stupid. But I guess she imagined that I'd had the same revelation. A revelation that I also died 50 years ago, and that I was probably going through everything she was, but I wasn't. I was just like having a really long out-of-body experience, but I wasn't. I walked closer to her, and I passed through Dr. Whitebaum's dining room table to come to her side. I knew basically what I had to do, but everything about it seemed wrong. Like, the mission I was tasked with shouldn't be taking the place of the compassion that this person in front of me deserved. And I wanted to help her. Her memories, her thoughts, her feelings, her wants, everything flashed through my mind as I looked into her eyes, and I really couldn't stop thinking that once this was all over, I'd just leave her to be a ghost. Okay, so listen, I'll just say it right off the bat, I am not actually a ghost, so I can't really say that I understand how you're feeling, any of it, but I ran out of words. What could I say to someone who had suffered this much, who had glimpsed so much in humanity?
Are you a demon? I mean, not to be weird or anything, but hell, man, are you? Is this hell?
No. I'm definitely, you're definitely not in hell. It's all, yeah, I'm still alive. You're not in hell.
So you're like a psychic or something?
No. Yeah, I guess.
What do you want from us?
Well, I need your help with, Ryan. Ryan he's a psychic too. About 10 years ago, he tried to get high off of datura. That's a flower thing. It's like that drug they gave you. Yeah, that made your mouth get all dry, and it made you forget everything. You remember? Yeah. So, well, you don't remember because sorry. He ended up getting detached from time because of an opening in the universe. He's taken over my mind now, and I guess I should clarify. So I took acid in a field up there, like a week ago. Up there, kind of that direction, and it was a week and a half. No, it was like a week. It was a week, I think. And the government, they don't use this place for mind control stuff anymore. It's actually just like It's all legit. It's space stuff. They tore a hole in the universe with a wormhole machine. And so I had the same thing happen to me. With the same thing that happened to Ryan had it happen to me. Only instead of being trapless at a time, I can read people's minds and I can pull people into my consciousness, which Ryan wanted to steal so that he could make himself into a god. But right now, there's another version of Ryan, and he's good, and he wants to help us break free of the evil Ryan. Sapphire tried to piece together what I'd said, and to discern whether or not it could be trusted. She studied my face. It looked like I could be all right, she guessed, but so did the guy who brought her here. She didn't trust men. She never did, really. I seemed different, but plenty of people had seemed different to her. And what I said sounded bizarre enough for her to wonder if this was all part of some experiment.
So, what do you want us to do?
I need you to help me. In about 12 hours, he's going to come back, and he's going to expect us to have forgotten everything that happened before. But the good Ryan is going to keep us from forgetting all. We have to keep the evil Ryan, he's called the Fisherman, from hurting Megan, that girl that was in here. He was trying to get us to kill her since she's the only one who can kill him.
And you trust this, good Ryan?
I don't have a choice.
Look, John, if that is your name, no. I'm not going along with any of your shit. I don't know what the fuck is going on, but I don't believe a damn word you say. And if you can read my mind like you say, then you know that I have some good fucking reasons to not believe you. You can stop your simulation, you fuckers. You're not fooling anyone.
She slammed her hand against the table and scattered various papers, coffee cups, and candles from its surface on the floor, then kicked one of the chairs, before turning away to continue yelling at the unseen government monitors.
You watching me? What the fuck do you want, man? John, what the fuck kind of name is that? That's the most generic motherfucking name you could think of.
I grabbed her by the arm. She tried to pull back, but instead I quickly forced my consciousness over hers. She shut her eyes. Piece by piece, I showed her my life, my home in Sacramento, a city which she knew well, my memories of rock hounding as a little kid and some of the national parks that she'd camped in, my first years of college, the time I worked as an intern at a research station by a volcano. I showed her the oil fields, but not too much of them. I showed her what it was like for me selling crystals and how I got here in Texas. I showed her my meeting with Megan, the fight with the mushrooms in the field, my efforts to help Jerry, and the portal that the mushrooms opened into Shiboba. I showed her what Ryan had done to me, and then showed her my escape into the real world. Stupefied, she opened her eyes and fumbled for words. She wanted to apologize for yelling at me, but didn't know how to. She didn't really know how to speak to me. She'd never actually spoken to a real LSD psychic, even though they'd tried to make her into an LSD psychic in a few sadistic government experiments. As much as she wanted to apologize, she didn't understand. She didn't understand me or the future I lived in, or the things that I'd seen. Meekly, she came closer and gave me a hug, trying to comfort me. A reasonable reaction, I guess, to learning about someone's experience of decades of imprisonment in a psychic prison. She imagined me being a flower child if I had been alive back at her time. She imagined sharing a joint with me in the back of her friend's van, driving through Arizona, or dropping acid out in the national forest around a campfire with me. She wished she would have known me before she died. She wished she would have been kinder to me, now that she could see what I'd been through.
How long do we have until he comes back?
12 hours, so I think until sunrise.
What do we do when he does?
When he comes back, we'll have to go along with what he says until the good Ryan gives us the signal to turn against him. He can't hurt us as long as the good Ryan is there to protect us.
And until then, we just...
Well, we have all night to watch after Megan, I guess. Or get get ready? I don't know. We can see how beer tastes in this timeline. We can steal some cake from the kitchen. Yeah, honestly, I have no idea. He just said to follow his instructions, so that's all I know. She pondered it for a moment and looked sentimentally over at Carlos and around the old, decaying base. Somehow the fact that it no longer served the purpose that it had served during her time gave her a weak sense of closure, but that was only a half freedom. She wanted to see the forest, to see the stars, the moon.
Can we go outside?
As much as I knew that I should say no, it would have felt terrible to tell her that. Yeah, of course, I said, turning to Carlos to invite him along. He didn't speak English, so I tried sending him an image of the moon.
Usted es de la luna,
he mumbled, aghast. I didn't exactly know what he said. I just got the impression that he thought I was from the moon. No, we're going outside. I tried to project the image of going outside into his thoughts. Somewhat confused, but not knowing exactly how to ask me to clarify, he reluctantly followed Sapphire and I up to the ceiling. The three of us made our way from Dr. Whitebaum's room towards the front entrance of the facility. I freely gazed into the minds of those below in order to learn more about the place we were flying over. The Horizon Deep Space Exploration Lab was colossal, with thousands of square feet of different hallways, 5 levels of office and laboratory space. The first level of it had been built in the 1940s for cryptography. Later in the 1950s, the area north of San Antonio became home to a number of bases for the development of secret technologies, the processing of Soviet intelligence, and the covert detention of spies. When the CIA began its MKUltra program, which experimented with LSD and other drugs in order to unlock secret potentials of the human brain, to develop enhanced interrogation techniques, and to control minds, the lab expanded and merged with several others. A scientist whose name no one in the base knows how to pronounce, named Ray Treichler, oversaw a long list of projects. Numbers 136, 145, 146, and 172 came to the minds of the people below most often. Most of the records of the ones Sapphire had taken part in were destroyed, living only in the minds of the ghosts. A steady flow of migrants, homeless, and hippies provided the lab with a large population of human subjects. The lab was left in decay for a decade after the Cold War, until an incident in 2006 led to increased governmental interest in developing deep space technologies and in renovating parts of the lab. The first experiments were dedicated to replicating reverse-engineered technology from alien wreckage, which was later tested in the desert southwest near Colorado. But this wasn't especially fruitful. Dr. Whitebaum was hired as a consultant and later became the chief scientist in 2014. Today it employed 2,500 people, with secret entrances spread out over 4 different towns. Eventually we came to the entrance near the water treatment facility, which was concealed so as to be entirely invisible from above. All that we saw as we drew near was a pair of railroad tracks that inclined sharply upwards, illuminated barely by the light of the moon. Sapphire's heart sung as she caught a glimpse of the moonlight, her face feeling the open air for the first time in half a century. Her stomach trembled as memories buried in deep wounds warned her that it was all a trap, that it was still 1967 and that this was all just another experiment. She shut her eyes and pulled herself from those fears. Carlos's stomach also sank into a pit, filling with butterflies as he dreamed of running home to Mexico and seeing what had become of his hometown if things had gotten any better, if any of his brothers or sisters were still alive. He imagined that the moment he saw the sky, he would fly up into it and rise over miles upon miles of desert as an invincible spirit, never to return to this awful place again. I didn't know how to tell him that we would all be forced back into the same place once the timeline resealed, but, the only time I'd ever spoken Spanish was when my cousin Andre told me to say something to this girl I had a crush on in elementary school. She ended up knocking out 2 of my teeth. My Spanish time travel vocabulary was pretty limited, so I supposed I'd just let him be. Both of them. I'd let them enjoy whatever there was out there, and then when the time came, we would return to our bodies and help Megan kill the fisherman. Then I supposed I could set them free. As she emerged from the end of the tunnel, Sapphire dashed up the hill and into the open air. I followed her, lackadaisically. Carlos trailed behind, eyeing the tall electric fences and wondering if I'd try to stop him from running away. His hair stood on end as the moonlight shone down on him. The night sky filled him with wonder. He was free at last. "You can fly away tomorrow, when we've killed Ryan and we're safe," I tried to say. He looked at me, puzzled by the strange words appearing in his head. I showed him a picture of what he was contemplating, and I said softly, No agora. No agora. Manana.
¿Manana? ¿Plátanos? ¿Qué? No me diga.
Vaguely comprehending, he grimaced and nodded, turning to walk in private through the field. Sapphire, who had been staring at a tree, looked over at me.
It's so beautiful out here.
The moonlight painted her eyes into gemstones and cast the crisscrossing shadows of pine needles over her skin. She smiled, her teeth glowing with an unearthly sheen. The forest seemed to breathe with life, even more so to us ghosts. Yeah, I know, it's really nice out here.
You camped out here?
Down the hill a little bit, yeah. Someone said I might see aliens.
Far out, man. I probably would have done the same thing if I didn't know the kind of shit that they do to people out here.
She ran her hands over the tree bark, studying its tiny winding canyons and the sap that dripped down along their surface.
So, whatever ended up happening with Vietnam?
Nixon ended up pulling us out, I think. Yeah, Nixon.
Really? Was he like the president?
Yeah, he was.
I thought he would have given up after losing to Kennedy.
I didn't really know that much about it or what to say, and she moved along.
How about segregation? Whatever happened to the civil rights stuff?
I mean, it's, over for the most part.
For the most part.
Yeah. So they ended segregation, and then, all of the white people just moved to Arizona. That's basically the same thing, but it's, over.
I think I remember hearing something like that. Just so you know, I know you can read my mind, but I was totally down with all the civil rights stuff. I had lots of colored friends back in California. How about the Russians? Did they ever attack us, or...?
No, they lost the Cold War thing.
That's crazy, man. How did they lose?
Kind of fuzzy on the details, but I think Ronald Reagan, managed to outspend them. That's what my grandpa says. She gulped when I said that word. She liked me, but she couldn't help but remember she was at least 45 years older than me in real time. She learned to hate old people when she was a teenager for being so out of touch and backwards, but now she felt like she was the backwards one.
Oh, huh. Reagan. He was in all those cowboy movies, right? Huh. Well, anyway, I guess I should ask you, what do the kids do in 2017?
Well, we got this really cool, thing called the internet. And it lets you, get information about anything you want, any time of day. And you can, talk to people from halfway across the country instantly using satellites and these phones. They're, they don't even have cables. Yeah. And the satellites, they're, Sputnik, but, bigger. So, because of the internet, what a lot of kids in 2017 will do is they'll play games online, they'll chat with their friends, they might be eating Tide Pods, but I think that could have been something I saw from them. But never mind. But I don't know. It depends. Some people go to music festivals. Some people like to read, stuff like that.
Okay. So what kind of music do they listen to?
Rather than trying to explain, I showed her one of the music festivals I'd gone to, where a DJ had been playing a dubstep remix of a Beatles song, which I thought she might have heard.
Beatles! Fucking awesome song! Alright, ready for this, Cleveland? Make some motherfucking noise!
She looked confused, so I tried another one, which was my friend from Philadelphia's band. Thought it sounded like the Beach Boys, but weirder. Like weirder than Pet Sounds weirder. The future was a strange place.
What about folk songs like, "Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man, play a song for me." You know that one?
Yeah, it's the one that's like, oh gosh. It's not doo-doo, and I don't...
I'm not sleepy and there ain't no place I'm going to.
Yeah, I've heard it. Just didn't know the words as well as you do.
So they still listen to Bob Dylan. That's cool.
Yeah, he's like a classic.
What about the Monkees? They don't still listen to the Monkees, do they?
I haven't heard of them, actually.
Good. Fuck the Monkees. Fucking corporate trash.
What did you guys do when you were on the road back in 65?
Oh, we'd smoke a few joints and jam out whenever we could. And, if we could score some acid, we'd trip. And I guess all the others were really into the whole free love thing. But we really just liked expanding our minds, really, and just being spiritual. Ben was the oldest, and he wrote poetry. And his lover, Willow, would knit. And I'd make sculptures. And then Moonbeam and Jimmy would really like to draw.
Cool. How do you meet them?
Well, I knew Willow, and she introduced me to Ben. And he had this idea that we'd all pitch in for a van and go around the country like the merry pranksters. We picked up Moonbeam on the way to San Francisco, and she met Jimmy somewhere in Ashbury. And, they were soulmates. Instant soulmates, seriously.
Sapphire and I wandered deeper into the forest until we came to Blackberry Creek, which bubbled out of a spring in the hillside. I told her about the geology of the area and the way that the spring would have formed as she taught me more about the 60s and life on the road with her friends. Before we knew it, both of us had forgotten that we were ghosts from different years. Both of us had forgotten our suffering, if only for a while, and had become lost in conversation. Before long, the sun started to peek over the horizon. It cast an omnipresent blue over the forest and brought the birds out to sing. The two of us gazed into the woods, with an uneasiness settling into our limbs. What if this was just another one of Ryan's tricks? I wondered.
What if all of this was another experiment?
She thought. A faint smile spread across her face and she chuckled, starting to tell me a story.
The worst trip I had before I'd come to this place was in Oregon. We camped out in the woods and I decided to take 4 tabs instead of 2. It started out fine until I didn't remember why, but I forgot what my face looked like, and I wanted to go find out what I looked like, so I went to this little creek, just like this one, and I sat down, and my face looked totally different. I started freaking out, and I went back to the campsite, and I asked Jimmy, hey, what does my face look like to you? And he tried to describe it, but, like, Moonbeam had this idea that she and Jimmy would draw my face together. Well, they were both on acid, too, so one of them drew me as this kind of, like, demon-looking thing, and the other drew me as this weird-looking fairy, and I freaked out. And, like, I insisted that I get into the car to get a mirror, but they wouldn't let me because they said I was ruining everyone's vibe and I needed to chill. So I just sat in the tent for like at least 8 hours, just freaking out about my face. And then I had this vision of like a jewel in the sky. And it was folding in on itself, filled with all these different animals and castles and buildings. And it was me. And I told myself I had all this wonder inside of myself that I could let out into the world, that I might look different to different people, but it really didn't matter because they didn't get it, you know? And someday someone would. I was lucky I talked myself out of it, but honestly, it was so horrible. And then, I mean, I died at 24 and never got to do, you know, fucking anything. And that trip was peanuts compared to what I went through here. It just...
She wasn't sure why she was talking about it. Well, my worst trip before this was in high school. My friend, who he's really stupid, he's like in jail now or something. My friend, he read on the internet that you could get high off of cough syrup. So he went to the store and we bought some. We figured it'd be pretty stupid and lame because, you know, it's cough syrup. And we just thought we had to take a lot for it to do anything. And so we took a lot of cough syrup. And an hour in, it got really weird. Like, I started seeing double, and everyone's voices sounded like they were, like, going faster than their mouths were moving, if that makes sense. The world started flickering, and I sat down, and I literally felt like I melted into the couch. I was convinced that I'd overdosed, and I was going to die. My friend suggests that I smoke weed, and if I smoke weed, I'll feel better, he thinks. So I smoke like a couple hits, and after that I don't remember anything. I just remember thinking I died and I'd gone to hell for hours and hours until I woke up, and it was maybe about 2 a.m. and I was still tripping, and I was outside and I had no idea where I was. I was just in the middle of the road walking. Everything looked like it was curving. It was a suburb, so all the houses were just repeating and repeating and repeating, and I felt like I was in a never-ending loop. Eventually, I came to a park, and I threw up in a trash can, and my friend's big brother came to pick me up because I had been, like, walking down the middle of the road, and one of the neighbors called them, I guess. And now every time I look at cough syrup, I think I'm going to throw up. She smirked, on the verge of laughing, but not quite relaxed enough to do so. The two of us looked out to the horizon, where traces of orange light made their way through the blue, surrounding us in sunlight that made our faces barely visible.
Should we go inside?
I don't think we need to.
Good, let's just wait.
The two of us joined hands, our fingers first barely touching and then wrapping around one another. The sunrise poured savory and rosy light over the earth. Any minute now.
John?
What?
We might die after this. I mean, we might really die, right? If I die... If I die, can you do something for me?
What is it?
I never got to have a funeral. I don't know where my body is. They probably burnt it or something, I don't know. I want you to give me one, if that's okay. I'd like you to go out into the desert and plant me a flower and sing me a song. Mr. Tambourine Man, I guess. Whatever that is. I mean, all my friends are probably dead, right? Or senile. Or they don't even remember me. No one probably ever bothered to look for me or give me a funeral or anything.
I will. And if I die, my rock collection is buried up in North Dakota. Bismarck, North Dakota, 30 paces downhill from the apartment complex at Chestnut. If you can tell them somehow, I don't know, to bury me there with my crystals.
Of course.
Thank you. Before I could finish my sentence, everything froze still. Bird hung in the air, its wings back in preparation for landing. The stream turned to ice. Our hearts ceased to beat. A sinister aura overtook the world as the hills burst forth with a ghostly roar. We had lost. No voice in my head needed to tell me so. Devastated, I watched Sapphire's face crumble inwards like a tiny clay vessel as my vision faded to black.
Mr. Tambourine Man, play a song for me. I'm not sleepy and there is no place I'm going to. Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man, play a song for me. In the jingle jangle morning I'll come following you. Though I know that evening's empire has returned into sand, vanished from my hand, left me blindly here to stand, but still not sleeping. My weariness amazes me, I'm branded on my feet. I have no one to meet, and the ancient empty streets too dead for dreaming. And take me disappearing through the smoke rings of my mind, down the foggy ruins of time, far past the frozen leaves, the haunted frightened trees, out to the windy beach, far from the twisted reach of crazy sorrow. It's to dance beneath the diamond sky with one hand waving free, silhouetted by the sea, circled by the circus sands, with all memory and faith drifted deep beneath the waves. Let me forget about today until tomorrow. Play a song for me. I'm not sleepy and there is no place I'm going to. Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man, play a song for me. In the jingle jangle morning I'll come